Hello and welcome to the Innovators. Each week we're serving up real talk from badass women who are dishing out the truth. No fluff and no BS here. Just raw, honest stories and lessons to inspire and empower the next generation of trailblazing women. We're here to keep it real and pay it forward. I'm your humble host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today we're talking to Arielle Lechner, CEO of NewPo. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Cynthia.
Hey, so I always want to ask my guests like how they got to where they're at. It's never a straight line. It's always kind of sometimes I think the road less traveled that zigs and zags around. So how did you get here? Tell us your story.
Yeah, currently, so like you mentioned, I'm the CEO of NewPo. It's an executive coaching practice. I'm an executive coach. And I actually started my career in politics. I'm from Montreal, Canada, and I studied political science in college, and then I moved to Ottawa, and I was working for a member of parliament. And after 6 months, I was like, this isn't quite for me. Things are moving too slowly. And this was back in 2013. And I had decided I wanted to instead work in tech, but the place to be was San Francisco. And so I moved to San Francisco. And when I got there, I started working on an app with two other guys. It was called Madly. I like to say it was a mix of like Reddit and Snapchat.
Mhm.
And we raised a bit of angel funding. We got some PR features, and we got like thousands of users, but we couldn't figure out how to monetize. We couldn't keep users on. Um, and people ended up using the app in ways that we didn't really anticipate. And so after a year, we kind of shut it down, and I needed to make some money. But that got my foot in the door
Yeah.
with the first startup I worked at. And I worked there. It was a B2B SaaS company. And
Mhm.
before, starting my coaching practice, I spent most of my time in B2B SaaS um, tech companies and some Web3 companies as well. And I was focused on go-to-market strategy. So, positioning and launching software products essentially. And, I moved then to New York City, joined, worked at some other startups. And, I liked the work. It
Mhm.
was creative, it was strategic. Um, but I noticed I was looking for more purpose. When you're launching products or you're working on products that, thousands of people potentially, millions potentially are using, it's cool. But I was more interested, I felt this longing to have more depth. And I became more and more interested in working more closely with people. And the catalyst I think that really set me on the path that I'm on now is I was at the final company I worked at. I joined when there was around 600 people, and within a year we were at around 1,200. And it really made clear whatever cracks in the foundation were there,
Oh yeah.
got highlighted. And I became really interested in why, some leaders of some teams are thriving and why some teams, are performing well while others are stuck. Um, why certain parts of the company, the culture was this, and in other parts, the culture was that. And
Mhm.
that's really what then set me on my new course to want to pursue executive coaching. Um, and so I started my practice in 2018. I left my full-time job in 2019. And then since then, I've really just been um, building my coaching practice and also doing some consulting on the side with startups.
Mhm.
And that's the gist of how I've gotten here.
It's super interesting. You describe your discomfort as a compass. No, so how do you help these? And you and I know being in Silicon Valley, these kind of high performing CEOs kind of lean into that discomfort instead of avoiding it. How do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I think what I've seen time and time again is, folks come for coaching and a lot of the time founders, CEOs, I mean, my definition of leadership is navigating ambiguity. Like anyone who can navigate
Mhm.
ambiguity and get other people to tag along, like you're being a leader.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times when people come for coaching, maybe what's underneath the content of what they're sharing is, what do I do? Like, what
Mhm.
what do I do next?
Right.
And folks can get really cerebral about it. But what I've seen is the thing we are avoiding because it's uncomfortable, because we're, fearful of what might come. Um, we tend to just put those things off and avoid them. And I think the thing we are turning away from or trying to shove away is precisely the thing that requires our attention right now. So anytime folks are wondering of, what should I do or what's the next thing or how do I get out of this? It's, well, what's the thing you're turning away from? That's what we need to turn towards right now. So that's why I like to say discomfort is the compass. If you're confused or lost or you don't know where to go, acknowledge the thing that you're trying to avoid, essentially.
That's super interesting. And then I can also imagine we all have blind spots, right? So, what are kind of the most common blind spots that you see when you're coaching, and how do you address them? I would say with like CEOs or startup founders, anybody who's, again, that ambiguity, that what's next.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's one common blind spot. What I would say is even the most brilliant people have a really hard time seeing the way they think. It's really hard on your own to see, oh, this is how I think. This is
Mhm.
how I perceive things. I think part of my role as an executive coach is to help leaders understand, hey, do you know that you think this way or that you perceive things this way, that these are the stories that are constructing your reality? And is this working for you or would you like to choose something different? Um, and you know, most of the time, people often come to sessions with, hey, this is my problem, or this employee's not doing this, or my co-founder, I'm butting heads with that. And I think what people often don't realize is, okay, you know, these other people might be doing X, Y, Z, but how did you create, promote, or allow this to become a problem?
Right,
Right?
right.
Owning your role in whatever thing is going on. Sure, there's outside circumstances that you can't control, and there is always your role in whatever suboptimal situation is, playing out. And being able to help people acknowledge that piece. And that's actually the piece we have control over and to change. We can't
Yeah.
really change or control other people.
I love the blind spot one because I think, like I said, we all have them. And how you say things or how you think, it is true. You just kind of think and say
Mhm.
things, and yet the way someone else perceives what you're saying may be completely the opposite of what you actually meant. Or,
Exactly.
I mean, the tone, and not everyone thinks the way that you do also. I think is that it's a hard one to learn, that, oh, Cynthia doesn't really work that way. Her
Mhm.
perception is different. So when you're speaking to her, coaching her, growing her, mentoring her, these are the things that she's going to relate to. And you can still get your message across, but you need to think about how she's going to perceive it the way that you're speaking. And I think that's so
Totally.
hard in management because you're used to just like, you're delegating things, it's fast paced. I need to get this done, this done, this done, go. And you're not realizing that they didn't even understand the urgency or the timeline or what you needed done first. Because in their mind, they're like, oh, everything, we need to do everything now. And it gets teams really scrambled, really fast.
Yeah, actually, what you just said, when not everyone thinks the same way. I think this is actually, you just reminded me of like another blind spot, which is we make a lot of assumptions. Like,
Yeah,
a leader, a
totally.
CEO will say something and assume that people took away from that what they intended. And so much of the frustration clients bring to conversations is, I gave this person this feedback, or I said this was the priority, and like, we're not generating the results we want. And when you really kind of dig in there and try to understand, like, is this person just blatantly ignoring you? Like, are they incapable? Actually, what we often find out, or what I often see, is you actually haven't been explicit.
Mhm.
Um, you've either beat around the bush,
Mhm.
or you haven't made clear what's at stake or what the consequences of not achieving this is. There's all kinds of it hasn't been as clear as you think it is. We all
Right.
people. So that's another thing that also stands out is we think or assume that people think the way we do, and they don't. We need to explicitly say what we mean, repeatedly, oftentimes.
Yeah. I mean, what a CEO hears from a board or from a shareholder meeting that they're trying to sometimes water down to the team instead of just saying, no, this is what we have to do. I've
Um,
been told this is what we need to do. This is my decision. This is what we need to do. And being explicit, not being rough,
mhm,
but being clear. I think they sometimes feel that if they're clear, they're being too harsh. And actually,
totally.
when you're not clear, it's actually worse for everybody, right? Because it becomes harsh
Yep.
on the other side because they don't, again, like you said, they're not achieving, or they didn't understand the consequences of not getting the goal, or they didn't understand what the circumstances were in order to achieve what they needed to achieve. So that the clarity is, it's hard in management, right? And you don't always get it
Yep.
right.
Yep. I mean, so yeah, being clear, direct, explicit. I think some folks have an aversion to that.
Yeah.
Um, it's simple, right? It's simple, but it's not easy.
No,
Easier said than done.
easier said than done. Um, you've worked with, 5,000 plus, thousands of CEOs. You have them in your Rolodex. You've guided leaders through, crazy pivotal moments, fundraising, acquisition. When you're in these high stakes kind of decision making, what's a piece of advice for that CEO, that leader? Because it is very high, acquisitions or fundraising, it's very high stakes and the pressure
Hmm.
is extremely high. What are some
Mm,
of the tools that you bring to the table?
mm. It's a great question. Thank you for the question. Um, what's coming to mind is we can influence outcomes, but we can't control outcomes.
Yeah.
And what we can control is what we bring to the decision or the situation or the circumstance. And what I always, when things are high stakes, when things feel intense with my clients, I always ask them the question, what would it, what would you need to do, or how would you need to show up to this such that regardless of the outcome, in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, you're proud of how you showed up?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that often the path is then revealed of what needs to happen. Because if you can be proud of how you navigated something, regardless of the outcome, I believe you will sleep well at night.
Yeah, and I think it crystallizes your decision-making process of what has to happen,
Hmm. Hmm.
how you're gonna show up and
Yep.
do your best and put everything forward and
Hmm.
emphasize the things that are critical to the company to have the acquisition happen or raise the capital. No matter what happens, if you don't have the acquisition or you don't raise the capital, it wasn't the right place, right time, right company, right acquisition.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
being okay with that too, because sometimes, you get in the situation of raising capital, especially in that, and you need the money so badly, and you can see so clearly what you're going to do with it. And when you don't get it, and you're so disappointed, um, many times you find another investor and you're like, oh my God, I dodged a bullet. These
Oh yeah.
other guys would have been, yes, would I have gotten the money faster? Sure. But would I have had to gone through long term with that partner, because it's like a marriage. You take someone's money, even silent investors are not always silent.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of other pressure. They say they're silent and they're not silent, goes along with it, right? And you dodge a bullet, and the next one you find is like, oh my gosh, this is actually the right company to be acquired by. My people are happy. Everything's excellent. I got the best money I could get at better terms than what I wanted before because of that minor disappointment or that bump in the road. I think it
totally,
gives you
totally, totally,
the perspective.
absolutely.
I always go into those as like, look, we're not curing cancer here, people. We're not saving the world. We're not, cleaning the ocean of all the trash. Like we're not curing cancer. So if we get it, great. If we don't, we have to buckle down and figure out another way. But people's lives are not on the line. And that perspective of that is, oh yeah, it's gonna be okay.
Right.
Even if the company goes under sometimes too, you're still better on the other side. You learned so much that your next startup, your next business, your next is that much better because you have those experiences. You can't win all the time. If you win, it's a horrible teacher.
Yeah. It's such a great point. And with everything you just said, I think something that also comes to mind that, I've advised clients is, it's, I like to say, like, don't make decisions from a place of fear. And also, like, you know, maybe sometimes people want to give me the middle finger because, like, easier,
Yeah,
easier said than done, right?
right, right,
Um, but if you can just ask yourself, what would I choose here? Or what would I do if I wasn't attached to the outcome?
right.
That is also helps you figure out like what is the correct way to navigate this.
And because you're in the situation, it's very personal.
Mhm.
It's hard to separate your feelings, of yourself from your company because they're one and the same.
Oh yeah,
in in in
that's
many
such a good
instances,
point.
right, your
Hmm.
whole identity is wrapped up in that company, and if it fails, you failed. It's like, no, you just learned something really amazing, and you have this great opportunity to
Yeah,
bring those lessons to other people so they don't
yeah,
screw it. You're like, oh, don't do this
yeah.
because I did this, and like that's a trap.
I was just thinking your serial entrepreneurship is showing because I
Yeah.
think that's one one of
Yeah,
the pieces I spend a lot of time on sometimes with clients is this separation of you are not your company. And if the
yeah,
company fails, you're not a failure.
yeah,
And this is so wrapped, intertwined for people, and it
yeah.
can mess with their thinking and decision making.
Oh yeah, big time in their personal life and their
Hmm.
professional life. I mean, there are
Hmm.
things
Hmm.
that I won't do again. I won't skip holidays. I won't skip vacations with friends. I won't, because I did and did and did and did and did. And I realized, how's that working for me? That wasn't so much fun. I always had
Hmm.
something else to do,
Hmm.
another business thing to do over the holiday. It's like, that's just stupid. That's just busy work to make myself feel important. It's
Hmm.
not really critical,
Hmm.
but that's ego.
Right,
That's ego talking. I think that's also, it takes time and experience and, perspective, I guess.
right,
Um,
right.
One of the things I noticed, like in your bio, you're known as kind of both demanding and supportive. How do you strike the balance with some of these clients who do have egos and are pushing back? Like that is a crazy balance, demanding and supportive at the same time. How do you balance that?
Um, well, I think it starts with creating a strong container of trust. Um, you know, yeah, it starts there. And the other thing I would say is, when you're working with a CEO or another C-suite executive, sure, they have to answer to a board. They still have people they have to answer to, but the
Yep,
pool of people who oftentimes they feel can be straight with them is small.
yep, very
And I
small.
think a lot of the times what leaders are looking for in coaching is someone to hold up the mirror,
Yeah, yeah,
and not beat around the bush. Say what needs to be said, but from a place of support and the belief that they can create whatever it is they want to create and become whatever it is they want to become. And so that's really how I strike the balance. And it's different with each person, right? With
Right.
each person who's different things that make up who they are, different essences. Um, but it's creating this container of trust, not letting them hide,
Mhm.
holding up that mirror. And then also, um, yeah, when they're in their inner critic or seeing one sliver, one piece of the pie of the truth and
Right.
not the wider perspective of what else could be true here, I remind them of that and I help
Yeah.
them see a wider perspective, I guess is how I would describe navigating that balance.
And I think that's great for CEOs, C-suite, because it's a critical skill that they can learn and they can leverage with their own teams.
Hmm.
Because it is like that. You're reporting to someone and you want to please them, you want to say, but if you're not honest and you don't trust them, you're not going to come up with the best ideas. You're not going to bring forth your true self, no matter what that is, and stand in your own truth and do the things you think are right versus what they're saying to do may not be the best path forward. But if you don't have that trust, if you're just saying yes to everything, then everybody loses.
Right. It, honestly, what you're saying is bringing me back to what we were talking about earlier around being direct and people sometimes feeling like being direct is mean or whatever. It's when you can be honest with people and say what you really think, but from a place of, I believe we can do better. And I believe there's more to create here. Uh, I mean, you do right by your team. You do right by everyone by being clear and honest about what you're noticing, so that people can actually rally around that and fix the problem or whatever it is.
That builds great companies. That's part of
Hmm.
the culture, right? Which
Hmm.
is so hard to build and can crack so easily and fall apart. I've seen
Hmm.
it on so many levels, so many times. And the strong
Hmm.
ones, you're always like, yeah, amazing experience. Everybody felt the same. We're all in the same boat rowing, different levels, different salaries, different organization, different parts of the world, but we're all rowing the boat in the same general direction. And that was, those types of instances are magical, I think, but very hard to create and to keep
Yeah.
going. I think
Hmm.
the sustainability of that is difficult.
That's it. Like maybe I think hard to create, yes, and hard to keep, especially hard to keep going when you're. I think of culture as like a recipe, right? And every new person you add changes the recipe.
Yeah.
And so when you're scaling, it's really, yeah, it's tricky. How do you maintain the type of culture you want to maintain when, yeah, you don't have especially as a CEO, you don't have a direct relationship necessarily with everyone you're working with.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Very difficult. Um, what's the one piece of advice? I love this one that you would give your 20-year-old self.
Oh man. Um, Act and believe like you're supposed to be there. I think I often um, would feel on certain teams like, oh, I didn't go to X school or work at, this blue chip company like some of these other people. I'm the
Mhm.
weakest link. Like I would have these type of loops. And it did nothing but get in my way of,
Mhm.
yeah. So I would just, yeah, you're here, therefore you deserve to be here. Act like it, think like it, behave like it.
No, that's
Learn
that's
that later, but I
that's
wish I learned it earlier.
yeah, no, that's a great piece of advice because I think we're all scared shitless going into the first jobs, especially when you're with a bunch of other people from other areas. And yeah, you're like, well, why am I getting called on to do these amazing things when I'm not really sure, if I can? But you are there for a reason. And
Yep.
standing in that is, extremely important, but it is a hard one, piece of advice. How do people get a hold of you if they want your coaching? The CEOs I know that listen to the podcast and executives, what's the best way to reach you?
Best way to reach me is either on LinkedIn through a DM. I'm Arielle Lechner. Or you can connect with me on my website. It's www.newpo.io. You can reach out to me there. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Arielle, thank you so much for being on the show. And I love your coaching, the philosophy on it. It's really, really great. Thanks so
Thanks
much.
for having me. Thanks
No
for having me,
problem.
Cynthia.
Thank you.